Greetings from India. I'm Shagufa Kapadia, and I'm very happy to present before you my research titled Identities of Young Indian Adults in the Context of a Fluctuating Cultural Landscape. So the basic premise of my research is as follows, that individual development is a function of culture and context interaction. Cultures and context change, and in the course of change, they offer opportunities and constraints that mediate identity development. So identity formation unfolds in response to developmental need as well as culture. Every culture has certain notions of personhood and developmental pathways that are prioritized, which influence identity formation. The cultural ideals and values translate into cultural goals, and these in turn shape identity development. My research anchors onto the framework put forth by Feeney and Baldelumar. It is an adaptation of the framework by Marcia, and it focuses on cultural variations in identity formation. So two cultural pathways are put forth: the independent pathway, which emphasizes on autonomy, individualized values, and personal choice, and involves broader exploration, whereas the interdependent pathway internalizes identity commitment of family and community, focuses on conformity and tradition, and involves relatively narrow exploration. The model also considers within culture variability in identity formation and domain-specific identity variations. So it's possible that in certain domains, the identity may unfold along an interdependent pathway, whereas in some other domains, it may unfold more along an independent pathway. One of the assumptions that this framework makes is also regarding the ways of thinking and evaluating options. So the authors contend that when broader explorations are involved, one has multiple options, and hence the individual is required to engage in critical thinking. Whereas if explorations are narrower, that means there are fewer options available, then it involves little or no critical thinking. My research questions this assumption and argues that even if the explorations may not be very broad, emerging adults think rather critically, weighing the pros and cons of a situation and demonstrate active agency in making decisions regarding identity options. A word about the Indian cultural worldview. So in India, the model of development is essentially an individual and social world model. The cultural scripts encourage interdependence and relationship with the social world, and family is of utmost importance. The notion of dharma is a defining element of individual development. It is a Hindu code of conduct for roles and responsibilities and codifies kartavya or duty as per one's life stage and gender. The Indian self evolves as the we self, and there is greater leaning on relational aspects of this self. The study context is as follows. So the interdependent developmental pathways prioritized in the Indian culture, and then the larger context of globalization and social change interacts with culture. And the specific context is educated urban middle class families who are at the forefront of social change. Urban educated families in India are seen to have increasing aspirations and expectations and are very keen to adopt new ideas and new practices. And three identity domains are addressed: occupation, marriage, and gender roles, which are very relevant during this developmental period. The research questions are as follows. How do urban Indian emerging adults construct and negotiate their identities in the contemporary Indian context? How do emerging adult women and men navigate personal goals pertaining to occupation, marriage, and gender roles that may run counter to cultural and familial expectations? And how is cultural continuity and change reflected in identity formation? So the participants were 65 single educated emerging adult women and men from urban upper middle class families in Baroda, India, the western part of India. And qualitative interviews were conducted. So one part of the interview involved asking very general questions about views of emerging adults on education, employment, socialization, marriage, and partner selection. And part two involved putting forth hypothetical vignettes which addressed hierarchical relationships and tension between personal choice and family expectations in the three identity domains. So the results are presented domain-wise, and I will highlight the salient themes that shape identity in each of the domains. So the vignette on occupation addressed a difference of opinion between actor and parents or spouse regarding choice of a non-conventional occupation or career. So essentially, the emerging adults took an independent decision in this context, and they consulted with parents or spouse only if they felt the need. And the key decision elements were that the occupation or job was financially lucrative. It was something that was of personal interest and personal choice. Women, however, also additionally brought in this concern for preserving family harmony, and they preferred more often than not to take a middle path wherein you will try to include best of both the worlds, so to speak. With regard to marriage, the study shows that the explorations in this domain are broadening from predominantly collective to individual preferences. So emerging adults, many of them prefer self-selection. And even when there is preference for arranged marriage, then it's a very democratic process wherein the entire family is actively involved in searching for a marriage partner. However, the final decision does rest with the individual. The age at marriage is increasing, and the emerging adults felt that they wanted financial stability and freedom to live their lives, so to speak, before assuming marital responsibilities. The expectations from marriage are also shifting towards an individualistic orientation, and compatibility and companionship are emphasized. And cutting across all of this is this need for parental consent and family harmony, preferably. So this is an underlying feature. So the vignette in this domain was as follows, that there's an intercaste marriage wherein the parents are against the marriage as the girl and boy is not from the same caste. So the themes are as follows. So one is that following personal choice. So the man here says, if my parents judge a person based on their caste, and if that is the reason they're not accepting the girl, then I would go against them and marry this girl and become a son-in-law and stay with girl's parents in their house, as they don't differentiate people based on their caste. So this young man is totally negating caste and would like to go with his individual choice. Yet another theme was related to respect and faith in parents' wisdom. So there is a big meaning behind it when parents say no. She won't be able to fit, adjust, not able to blend with us. She won't be able to take care of us. So one should understand. No matter what, this caste will always come in between. No matter what people may say otherwise, it won't change. And this young woman says, love is ultimately an emotion only. Parents with the capacity to think about long-term implications would be better able to guide. I trust their judgment. Yet another theme revolved around care and concern about hurting parents and retaining family support. So this young woman says, Bharati has been their daughter for more than 24 years. They have nurtured her, so she should not go against their choice. They will get hurt and she would not be happy. Parents are like pillars, you need their support. There is no guarantee in marriage. We can see how often people are getting divorced. If in future anything goes wrong and if she does not have family support, she would be really in bad condition. Women also in this case tended to take the middle path. So here is a young woman saying, see, she will not be happy with anyone else as she loves this guy. But without her parents, she won't be happy with Prati. She has to try to convince parents. She should say that I won't get married to anyone else, so her parents will understand at some point. For gender roles, the vignette addressed a difference of opinion between the actor and parent or spouse regarding opting for a non-gender stereotypic career. So the core gender scripts continue, but these are big questions. So men are questioning their gender roles of provider and protector, whereas women are seeking more flexibility in domestic and family care responsibilities. So man's provider burden, there are many struggles that men face. There is less burden from any kind of family on a girl. Because in a typical Indian society, some girls are least bothered about their career. They just want to marry a guy who's rich. So the burden is on the guy to earn for his family. When you're a male, you cannot sit at home after a certain age. It is not the same with females, because somewhere in the back of their mind, they know that parents will get her married to a guy who will keep her happy for her entire life. Whereas for me, I cannot live in the hope that I will get married to a rich girl and she will make a living and I will sit at home. And here's a young woman, again, trying to balance the rules. So Meena should take up the job because she's passionate about it. So she has to do what she wants to do. It is her own life, so she can do whatever she wants. And if she thinks that she can manage both household and job well, then she should obviously choose this job. She should not sacrifice it. She should discuss with her husband and find a middle way out in the interest of families. The women are engaging in a balancing act. So if we look at the three domains, then we find that occupation is something which follows more of an independent orientation, whereas with regard to marriage, although there is a shift towards a more individualistic orientation, this need for taking the family along and for family consent and parents' approval still continues. And of course, the family is very actively involved in the partner selection process and decisions. With regard to gender, there is definitely movement towards a more egalitarian attitude. However, the traditional cultural roles persist, at least as far as behavior is concerned. So there are broadening identity explorations in all the three domains, and we see differing flexibility in pathways of exploration across the domains. Individuals are trying to balance independence and interdependence and trying to create a synthesis of individual choice interspersed with concern for family harmony. The middle path is something that has been endorsed more by women. Madhyam Marg, as is termed in Hindi. This is something that is imbibed into Indian consciousness as a very highly valued choice of path. And very often than not, we find women taking this path in interest of relational or family harmony. Finally, critical thinking and agency are very clearly reflected in the conscious and deliberate weighing of pros and cons to arrive at a decision. So contrary to what the theoretical framework contends, the data shows that the emerging adults are engaging in very logical, rational, and critical thinking, weighing the pros and cons, trying to understand the short-term and long-term gains and losses for self and the family. So there is interplay of cultural continuity and change, continuity in terms of primacy of families, family involvement, obligation and support are continued. Marriage decisions are also a family affair, so active family involvement continues in this domain. And change is reflected in the emphasis on individual career aspirations, choices, and individuals are articulating more clearly what their own wishes are, and they are trying their best to fulfill their own wishes. And finally, there are indications of gender egalitarianism, at least in the attitudes. And as an end note, it is hard to escape the point that in the heart of symptoms of modernization and social change, the phenomenon of cultural persistence is staring at us, if only we would pay attention to it. So thank you.